IELTS Listening, version 16208. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to section 1 on page 2 of your question booklet. Section 1. You will hear a man phoning to ask about a festival in a town called Beachin. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6 on page 2. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Beachin Festival Office?
Oh, hello. I want to check some details about the festival. I know tickets are running out fast, and I haven't got access to the internet at present. My computer's down.
OK. Well, the first activity is on June the 19th at 7 p.m, and it's a concert with local musicians performing.
Oh, lovely.
The activity on June the 19th is a concert, so concert has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Beachin Festival Office?
Oh, hello. I want to check some details about the festival. I know tickets are running out fast, and I haven't got access to the internet at present. My computer's down.
OK. Well, the first activity is on June the 19th at 7 p.m, and it's a concert with local musicians performing.
Oh, lovely. Is it in the theatre, like last year?
Yes, that's right. And for the next activity, on the 20th, the time's changed.
Is that the tour?
Yes. Now, it does say on the tickets that it's a 3:40 start, but that's an error. There wasn't time to update them, unfortunately, so it should say 4:30 instead. The correct time is on the website, though.
Oh, right. Because one of my friends wants to go on that, to see Beachin with an expert and find out about the town and its history. Does she need to get a ticket in advance?
No, just turn up at the station where the guide will be waiting. They'll start from there, and I think the plan is to stop for a break in the park. And there's no charge for the tour. And the tour will finish with a visit to the 16th century mill where they used to make flour. It's recently been restored.
Fine.
And then on the 21st, there's an all-day event for children.
Oh, that could be good for my visitors. They're bringing theirs, you see.
Right. Well, the plan was to have a painting competition for the kids, but it's now going to be cooking instead, and there'll be prizes for all the different age groups.
Oh, great.
And it's in Beachin Community Centre.
Oh, yes, I know where that is.
They don't need to bring any ingredients, but they'll need to have a plate to put whatever they've made on so they can display it and then take it home.
Sounds good. And are they going ahead with the fireworks in the evening, or is that cancelled? There was an article in the paper after last year's display which suggested it might not be happening again.
That's right. No, that's still on. It's getting more popular each year, and having it in the town square was starting to be a bit difficult because of the numbers, which is why it's next to the river this time. It'll be easy for large numbers of people to get to.
Yes, of course. I'm sure there's lots to look forward to.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10 on page 2. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
OK, now, I just want to check how it's going to impact on me as a local resident. I mean, some people last year thought it was too noisy at night.
Yes, I know. And that's why this year, evening events won't go on beyond 11:15. I know previously some activities lasted until 11:45, and the new time applies now to all the events, every evening.
OK.
And another change, perhaps you know about this already, is that because of high visitor numbers, parking in the town centre isn't going to be allowed. It'll be outside town.
Oh, yes, to keep the streets clear, I suppose, for all the visitors. I did know, actually, and it's not really going to be a problem for me.
Right.
I mean, I can just walk into town from my home.
OK. Well, anyway, if you want to check any more details about the festival, once you're back online, you can look at www.events.com. And you'll be able to comment on what activities you enjoyed, and what would really help the organisers would be if people could use the website to give feedback about what they enjoyed and that kind of thing. This will help them plan for next year.
That's probably a good idea. And with pricing, I know local residents...
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2 on page 3.
You will now listen to a talk by the water project manager of a charity called Charity Water. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17.
As Charity Water's water project manager, I travel to some of the most desperate places on earth in search of clean water. And while the landscape changes, there's always one thing that remains the same. The women are always walking. Whether I'm in the mountains of Haiti in rural Liberia or the jungles of the Central African Republic, the women are always carrying water. To give you an idea of the work that Charity Water does, I'll tell you the story of one of these women. Driving down a bumpy road in the middle of northern Uganda, our truck suddenly swerves off the road and up over an embankment. We usually prefer to surprise communities by our arrival because it makes it easier to monitor how our water points are functioning, without hundreds of people watching. But once you visit a few communities in the neighbourhood, rumours of your presence spread like wildfire. We jump out of the truck and walk into a party. This is when I met Helen Apis. She told me about the new freshwater well in her village. I am happy now, Helen beamed. I have time to eat. My children can go to school, and I can even work in my garden, take a shower, and then come back for more water if I want. I am bathing so well. A few of the men chuckled to hear a woman talk about bathing, but all I noticed was Helen's glowing face, the fresh flowers in her hair, and the lovely green dress she wore for special occasions. Touching her forearm, I replied, "Well, you look great." "Yes," she paused, placing both hands on my shoulders and smiling. She said, "Now I am beautiful." That really hit me. My job is to focus on sustainable development, health, hygiene, and sanitation to make sure Charity Water's projects are working in 20 years. But nowhere on any of my surveys or evaluations was a place to write, "Today, we made someone feel beautiful."
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you will have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen carefully and answer questions 18 to 20.
Before she had clean water, Helen would wake up before dawn, take her only 2 5-gallon jerry cans, and walk almost 1.5 miles to the nearest water point, which happened to be at a school. Because there simply wasn't enough water for the area's population, she'd wait in line with hundreds of other women who also valued clean water. Helen's only other option was to skip the wait and collect contaminated water from a pond. Helen spent most of her day walking and waiting. She told me each day she'd say to herself, "How should I use this water today? Should I water my garden so we can grow food? Should I wash my children's uniforms? Should I use it to cook a meal? Should we drink this water?" With 2 children, 1 husband, and 10 gallons, Helen had to make choices. I saw the shame in her eyes when she described how she would return from her long trek to find her 2 young children waiting for her. They were often sent home from school because their uniforms were dirty. With the new well in her village, her life was transformed. She now had choices, free time, options. Also, Helen had been chosen to be the Water Committee treasurer, collecting nominal fees from 51 households to use for the maintenance of their well. Water committees are often the first time women are ever elected to leadership positions in villages. Last month, Helen was standing in line waiting for water. This month, she's standing up for her community. And now, she is beautiful.
That is the end of part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 2.
Part 3. You will hear a discussion between 2 students about taking a course to become a personal support worker. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
Becky, hi. What are you doing here at the college?
Hi, Jason. Just using the library. What about you?
I'm taking the PSW program. You know, personal support worker.
You're kidding. I've just qualified as a PSW.
Really? I'd love to talk to you about the program.
Okay. Well, first off, the main duties they taught me here were exactly what I needed on the job.
You mean like bathing and dressing people?
Yes, young and old need this. You'll work with people of all ages, from young people with disabilities to seniors. But, you know, nothing really prepares you for how alone many people are. They crave conversation. And I don't mind chatting with them while I work, though that's not officially in my job description.
I think I'd like to focus on seniors' care. And with the country's older population growing, maybe I'll get a job fast. Do we have to be responsible for any medications?
No, that's not for us to do. And while you will prepare meals, you won't feed people. But working to keep clients healthy and able to live on their own without risk as long as possible is always the goal. And we're recognizing that with lifespans increasing, long-term care facilities won't be able to keep up with the number of people who will need care.
I almost didn't meet the requirements for entry into the PSW program. I was one course short getting my high school diploma, so I had to go back to summer school. I took science because I'm no good at math. Oh, and speaking of not getting in, having my first aid certificate was a real piece of luck. I would have been turned down without that, too.
And I would have had a problem with immunizations, except that I traveled the year before, and when the doctor checked my records, they were up to date. I also had to hand in a written essay on why I wanted to be a PSW.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
So, Becky, what did you think about the courses you had to take in the personal support worker program?
Well, I used to think I got my points across pretty well with people until I took the Understanding is Essential course. For starters, it taught me how to express myself much more effectively. I also learned a lot about preparing clear reports for my supervisors and dealing in a better way with people in general. You know, like giving facts without personal views. You'll find that you need those skills every single day.
I'm enjoying the Foundations course. I'm taking it now and I'm getting a lot out of it. Because support workers are a newer level of care in the province, I think we absolutely have to understand how we fit into the overall system. It's a great place to voice your opinions freely. Some are quite personal. Did you have to take a course called The Way We Work? I didn't know psychology was part of the program.
That course was a favorite of mine, but it's probably not what you're thinking, Jason. It's about what happens on the inside of the body and covers the functions that keep our bodies operating well. Even if you're not a PSW, the course is really interesting. I learned so much.
What do you think about residence care? I know the thinking now is that long-term care facilities aren't the answer for our aging population.
Right. And so this course zeroes in on the changes people can make to their homes so they can stay there, like installing higher toilets, for example. You'll also learn about specialized equipment people can get to help themselves, safety bars for the shower and so on.
Do any of the courses focus on the families of our clients? After all, any kind of illness or disability affects everybody.
So true. And yes, there is one. It's called Dynamics. You usually get that in your last term. You'll learn different strategies to help relieve some of the anxiety and strain that happens within the family. I got a lot out of that course. It's the only one that focuses on emotions rather than facts. I think giving people this kind of help is just as valuable as any kind of expensive equipment they buy to help themselves.
The course I'm really looking forward to is The Power Within.
Oh, it's terrific. Getting old has quite an impact on the mind, as you know, but you'll be taught ways to help clients keep the mind active so they're not so forgetful. You'd be surprised how much improvement you can see in clients when you apply these methods.
That is the end of Part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 3.
Part 4. You will hear a lecture about some archaeological research. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
So far in these lectures, we've been looking at evidence of human migration across the African continent and into mainland Asia. Today, let's see what evidence we have for Stone Age man, specifically in Japan. The particular evidence, as you will see, has had a considerable impact on the beliefs of both archaeologists and anthropologists. Let's start by mentioning the man who first discovered this evidence. In 1877, an American zoologist, Edward S. Morse, went looking for shells and fossils in Japan at Omori, an area which had once been coastal, but he also ended up discovering fragments of pottery. On the fragments, there was a pattern that was unlike anything archaeologists had seen before. At the time, it was thought that this pottery was no more than a few thousand years old. Then, in the 1960s, archaeologists were carrying out excavations in Fukui Cave in the Japanese island of Kyushu, and they found more examples of this pottery. They could now take advantage of carbon dating technology, and to their amazement, it showed that the pottery had been made around 12,000 years ago. That's 10,000 BC. This pottery has become known as Jomon pottery, and the period of time during which it was produced has been named the Jomon period. How did the people who made this pottery find their way to Japan in the first place? During the Ice Age, somewhere between 35,000 BC and 30,000, the Japanese islands, as we know them today, were connected to the eastern and southeastern Asian mainland. So you could cross from one large landmass to another over something that we call a land bridge, and that's how Stone Age humans crossed into Japan. But when temperatures finally rose, this led to some major environmental changes. Japan had been covered in frozen earth, but now, with the warmer climate, forests grew. With this new habitat, smaller animals began to appear, such as sika deer, still found in Japan today, as well as wild boar and bear. Where once people had used spears to attack the elephants and giant deer that they depended upon for food, for hunting the new smaller animals, they replaced these weapons with arrows and developed skills in archery. The new habitat also meant that they had a new range of foodstuffs at their disposal, which they could collect, a greater variety of plants, nuts, and fish. Now, this way of life continued for thousands of years. But then we come to the early Jomon period, which was from about 10,500 BC to 8,000 BC. Well, according to previous archaeological theory, the people in these very early societies didn't make or use pottery because they were hunters who were constantly on the move, following the animals, and they wouldn't have been able to carry it around with them. But it now appears that the early Jomon people actually seemed to have invented pottery making while they were still getting their food in this way, long before they had begun to rely on agriculture as a source of food. Later, in the Jomon period 8,000 BC to 5,000 BC, we find larger pots that were used to boil vegetable-type food to make it edible, which suggests that the Jomon people had become at least semi-sedentary. In other words, were remaining in the same place for a while. For a long time, they had lived in caves, but now we find evidence of villages. One of these has been found to the southwest of Mount Fuji. There is evidence of 10 round buildings. The Jomon dug shallow pits in the ground and used wooden posts to hold up the roof. Each of these houses had its own 2 stones, a flat one and a grinding one, for breaking down the nuts and other hard vegetable-type foodstuffs that lived on at this time. This more sedentary culture led to important population increases. By the end of the Jomon period, we see the influence of migration from northern Asia and the southern Pacific. For example, the newcomers brought with them technological developments in textiles and glassmaking, and they also introduced their marriage rituals. We also have evidence that the migrants influenced local architectural styles and methods of construction. At this time, the Jomon people also began to cultivate food, and in particular, rice. At last, a real step towards the practice of agriculture. It is remarkable that this unique culture survived for so long without it.
That is the end of part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers.